Shalom family, and welcome to Into All Truth. May the Ruach HaKodesh deposit his word in the soil of your heart and may it bring forth righteous fruit. May he lead you into all truth and show you things to come. So you guys, I had to just try and knock off a quick video on this. I wasn't sure I could get all this information in order doing a live broadcast, but this is going to be kind of messy, but here it is. I just have been so concerned about these children, and you really should be too. So just take a look and comment below, and I will be here for the live stream. And please subscribe and hit the notification button and like and share. So the scripture says in Revelation 7:3, do not harm the land or the sea or the trees until we put a seal on the foreheads of the servants of Yah. Then I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 from all the tribes of Israel. These, in Revelations 14:4, it says, these are they which were not defiled with women, for they are virgins. These are they which follow the Lamb, whithersoever he goeth. These were the redeemed from among men, being the first fruits of Yah unto the Lamb. Now, this is the reason why I believe children are so under attack, because they are generally virgins, and especially the sons of Yahshua. Remember, as I said, a star or meteor fell over Nigeria several months ago, and that was a sign that a fallen one, a leader of a principality, was defeated. Just like when Daniel has been praying and Hamashiach's angel of Yah comes to him and says he has been fighting for over 40 days, I believe it was, with the prince of Persia. So the prince of the power of the air over Persia was warring with him, a fallen angel. And when the angels fall, they create these meteors. And so some principality fell in Nigeria. And so this is the beginning of change, because Nigeria is one of the wealthiest countries, or should be anyway, in terms of oil revenue in Africa. Unfortunately, financially, it is not the wealthiest due to the great corruption of the Fulani leaders.
Nigeria is up to something. Nigeria is up to something. Nigeria is gone. You can see this trailer full loaded with human being. Almajirin inside this trailer, and they want to drop. Yes, they are dropping them in different locations in the FCT, and they will stop them. We'll stop them. They are not going anywhere until the authority comes. They are not going anywhere. They cannot kill all of us. They can't kill us. People are afraid now, panicking. There's a heavy tension in Waru village now. Full loaded truck, as you can see. Full loaded with Almajirin inside this truck. Biafra, I've called the authorities to come and take them away, because we cannot accommodate them. They are suspects. They are suspects. We cannot accommodate them. Look at it. Look at them. Look at them. Full loaded. Full loaded.
For me, it all started with these very alarming scenes of these children being rounded up and put into trucks in Nigeria. And it was saying they were being transported back to North Nigeria. But I just thought, why are they rounding up all these children off the streets so suddenly like this? And it really frightened me and made me feel concerned for them. And also, obviously, for a lot of people who were shooting video of this and talking about it and complaining about it. And you see the children in the trucks here. So one of the reasons why I really want you guys to see this video, it's taken me a bit of time to do some research on it, and this is by no means comprehensive, so please add information at will, because I've just looked into this on my own. In order to understand the Almajirin system, it is important to start with the story of a boy named Al-Hassan. He was born in Bebeje Kano Emirate in 1877. His father died when he was 8, and his mother, Amaria, left for Accra and left her children in the care of a slave named Tata, who sent Al-Hassan to an Almajirin school in Bebeji, where he worked and learned from Tayanaya Mallam. At age 17, he went to Accra to see his mother, who promptly took him to another Mallam. After a year or two, he returned to Bebeji, and from his foster mother, Tata, he learned thrift, and from his Mallam, he learned hard work, and this knowledge he put to work, working trade routes that were opening up in the brave new world of British imperialism. And by 1906, Al-Hassan was using steamships to move merchandise between Accra, Sekondi, and Lagos. And by the time he died, he was the wealthiest man in West Africa, and he was the great-grandfather of Aliko Dangote, and he had been an Almajiri. So this is the beginning of the story. So the Almajiris of northern Nigeria, a time bomb waiting to explode. This is written last June. And this is due to the fact that the children there are so abused. And in this story, it says a 10-year-old Muhammad, that's not his real name, wakes up every morning as early as 6 o'clock, moving from house to house, begging in the name of Allah. Now, of course, the scripture says that the children of Yah are never forsaken, nor do their children beg bread. So why spiritual teachers would have children begging bread is beyond me. But anyway, and they do that all night until as late as 10 o'clock. Poor, dirty, ragged, destitute, cracked lips, crumpled legs due to heavy trekking, and hungry faces. He would eat anything his mouth feeds on, from leftovers, foods, junks, even garbage. He's exposed to sickness, disease, kidnapping, child abuse, and other vices. And this is another boy, Jibrin, 11, had just been rushed to the Mallam Amenu Kanu Teaching Hospital in Nigeria. He'd been raped in the anus by lecherous pedophiles and suffers great and tremendous pain in the anal region. He sits uncomfortably as he grits his teeth in pain and despair, waiting for the doctors to attend him. And of course, it's terrible. So who are this is why you have to pray for these children, you guys. And this is very complicated because we're going to go into who they are. They are the outcasts of Israel amongst the Muslims who had been force converted. And we'll get more into that as we go here. But according to this article, Almajiri is a word borrowed from the Arabic language, originally called Al-Muhajirun, rather, commonly used for someone who leaves his home in search of knowledge in the Islamic region. These children leave their parents at an early age to learn the Quran at the abode of respected Mallams. So Mallams are teachers. And unfortunately, many of the children are abused by some of these Mallams, forced to do dirty jobs and often seen carrying plates in search of food because they had been abandoned by their parents and are at the mercy of the trusted Mallams. This is how you can tell this is a Babylonian religion, because they practice pedophilia and they abuse. Professor Idris A. Abdulkader, during the 21st Convocation lecture at Bayero University, was quoted as saying, the Almajiri system of education as practiced today in northern Nigeria is a completely bastardized system compared to the form and conditions under which the system was operating and its output during the pre-colonial period. The system has been forced, especially with the coming of the British, to its present pitiful state. During the pre-colonial era, begging was never involved, and certainly the pupils were not reduced to doing menial jobs before they could eat. So that's the system. In the past, the children lived with their parents for moral upbringing, and then the schools were located in the immediate environment from where the pupils came from. So they would just go to and from school. Then there was this Danfordio revolution, and this Quranic literacy was instated. And then they were reporting directly to the emir of the province of northern Nigeria. And what has happened is that the Almajirin culture outlived its purpose and became a breeding ground for child abuse and recruitment into terrorist groups. And these children should have become Islamic scholars, and now they have to struggle to cater for themselves rather than learning under a teacher or Mallam. And the Mallams themselves lack financial and moral support. And so the system runs now as a means of survival rather than a way of life. And the children are generally a byproduct of polygamous, let me say that again, polygamous or broken homes. That's a perfect way to break a home, through polygamy, okay? Or simply economic challenges in the family. They lack adequate family cover, and they're sent out in the streets under the guise of Almajirin as soon as the family's resources are overstretched. So it's a very systemic problem. And then they grow up on the streets without love, and they're exposed to abuse, homosexuality, and pedophilia. And so they have tried to ban this system. 2013, David Mark called for the banning of this educational system because they could join a terrorist group. They're more concerned about that than the children.
Government policies and the right framework are quite essential in tackling this monster that seems to have made the children a meal ticket for some of the so-called leaders who have put in their hands plates to solicit for arms. The state's chief executive expresses his concern.
If you talk in terms of answering, catering to the child, if you ask the parents of those children, as far as they are concerned, that system is catering for their children. It's giving them some sort of education, for whatever it may be worth. But you see, changes are very, very difficult things. They happen, but when they happen with difficulty, and they happen very slowly. The advent of the Almajirin school may be the way out of this quagmire. But it's something that will take time. We have to educate people to understand that nobody is trying to stamp out the system they are used to. All we are trying to do is to improve on the system for them, especially improve on the welfare of those little children that they bring. So we are going the way of changes, but definitely, like I said, changes are difficult and they are usually very slow. Changes are very, very difficult things. They happen, but when they happen with difficulty and they happen very slowly. The advent of the Almajirin school may be the way out of this quagmire. But it's something that will take time. We have to educate people to understand that nobody is trying to stamp out the system they are used to. All we are trying to do is to improve on the system for them, especially improve on the welfare of those little children that they bring. So we are going the way of changes, but definitely, like I said, changes are difficult and they are usually very slow. Recently, we have established the first Orphans and Vulnerable Children's Academy, meant for them specifically, with state-of-the-art facilities in terms of hostels, in terms of classrooms, etc., etc. And along with the teachings in the schools, we are also teaching them skills. So we are expanding our horizon towards catering for orphans and vulnerable children. A lot of the urchins you see in the streets are vulnerable children. Some of them, the parents are dead, they are orphans. Some of them, the parents are too far away, which makes them very vulnerable to the vagaries of living in the society, like what the picture you have painted. So we are concerned as a government, and we are empowering our agency to deal with that, and it's doing very, very well.
While the 13-year-old boy expects some miracles to get him out of the hospital bed, the police say they have launched a manhunt for the culprit who sexually abused the minor.
As it is, we were in Darazo, the venue of the offense, and we made inquiries.
You will recall the Chibock Girls, the Hausa Muslim girls who were kidnapped, raped, abused, and to this day have not been returned. But many funds, private NGO organizations, and charities, and the selling of t-shirts made them a financial boon to many. However, they've not been returned and many have disappeared. But they were a financial opportunity at one point. So I'm really asking you to pray for these Almajirin children, because COVID-19 drove governors and state officials to ban the Almajirin system in Nigeria. And this is quite complicated. So I want you to understand exactly what is going on there. So they've asked the northern governments to ban the Almajirin system, and they've agreed to ban it as part of their efforts to curb the spread of COVID-19. And this has formed part of the discussion of a teleconference by the northern governors on Tuesday, and there were 17 governors in attendance in northern Nigeria. Now, according to this article, the Almajirin children are usually left to fend for themselves, survive through street begging and scavenging, as we've already said, and they are far removed from all sources of information on COVID-19 and the opportunity of parental guidance on the messages and guidelines. The implication is that they're not able to protect themselves or be able to observe any social or physical distancing or access medical services they should they contract the virus. So you see there's this big emphasis on, COVID is the skeleton key. And of course, it's causing them to round up these children. But what for? What are they rounding up these children for now suddenly? There's a number of motivations, which we'll get into. But the forum also called for the expansion of the social register to include the Almajirin children in the provision and distribution of food and non-food items and cash palliatives at strategic locations close to them. The protocol, according to the forum, should be in line with the Convention on the Rights of Children, African Charter of the Rights and Welfare of the Child, and other conventions ratified by the country. So we see here, though, that there's a connection to rounding these children up and financing. Where do we see it? In this other article. Now, you guys should go and read these articles for yourself. This is from Daily News. You can see it if you zoom in on up above. I have the link there. So now here it says Northern government bans the Almajirin system. Look what this is attached to. Senate passes additional $484 billion COVID-19 relief package. Now, this is keeping in mind all these corrupt government officials getting all this money from the West to promote this COVID stuff. So Lalong also said he discussed with President Muhammadu Buhari concerning the need for the region to assess special funding, palliatives, testing centers, and other forms of support to assist the fight for the COVID pandemic. They talked about testing centers within the North, advocating that all states in the region should have at least one center. So, you know, when they test, then they get results, right? A lot of them. Meanwhile, a forum on NGOs under the Advocates for Dan Almajirin called the federal government to provide for the Almajirin children in its response plan as well. So you see there's a financial incentive behind this, but there's probably way more to it, because testing also means vaxing, right? Well, I can't say for sure this is what's going on, but we do have some other coincidences going on at the same time, and you can figure it out for yourself. But let's continue with some more of the highlights from this article. A forum of 5 non-government organizations comprising Plan International Nigeria, Street Child Ripplington Education Initiative, the Almajirin Child Rights Initiatives, said the rise in the number of COVID cases to more than 600 across Nigeria has raised great concern. And according to the 2014 report by UNICEF, here we go, the UN, the Almajirin constitute 9.5 million of the country's children within the ages of 3 to 14. The Almajirin children, the forum noted, are already exposed to poor health conditions with very high probability of contracting the virus if not adequately secured given their situation. And while it's laudable that the government is investing resources to maintain law and order during the pandemic, there is no special evidence of special attention to issues affecting children. The Almajirin said that children are more vulnerable in periods of emergency. So this is one of the leaders looking after the situation. Notice the scarring marks on his face, which would be more in common with the Fulani or Edomites or the Hamitic people of Africa. So these are not the same people as these young Almajirin. But ultimately, even the Benue government turned away 10 of these Almajiris for concern that they might have coronavirus. So they're being rejected even in their so-called home states. This particular news story speaks of the Islamic State of West Africa releasing a video of a child who looked to be around 10 years old executing a Christian man in Borno, Nigeria. So there has been fears of the potential of these children being used as child soldiers for these types of things by Boko Haram. And Boko Haram is financed by the Turkish, and it's an Islamic kind of military, what people believe is a terrorist organization. And so we have the evidence here that these children could potentially be used as a device for that. And there's even a history of many of them being jailed for months and even years without any hearing, any court proceedings, on the grounds that they are this potential military threat. When we look at the history of this, the Nigerian army had imprisoned a lot of child suspects, suspecting that they could possibly be used by Boko Haram as military agents, terrorists, child bombers, that sort of thing. And this became of great concern to Human Rights Watch. And so consequently, the story with this particular case is that the Nigerian Army's release in October 3rd of 2019 of 29, the Nigerian Army's release on October 3rd, 2019 of 25 detained children is an important step toward rights respecting treatment of children affected by the Boko Haram conflict in northeast Nigeria. The 23 boys and girls had been detained at Gera Barracks, the main military detention facility in Badagry, Borno State, for suspected involvement with the armed Islamist group Boko Haram. Now, like I said, they're financed by Turkey, okay? The children were released 3 weeks after Human Rights Watch published a report documenting the degrading inhuman conditions in which children have been held at Giwa Barracks. Human Rights Watch found that the children were detained without charge for months or years in squalid and severely overcrowded cells. Children described beatings, overwhelming heat, and frequent hunger. The Nigerian army's release of children from Giwa barracks signals important progress in the government's willingness to abide by its human rights obligations, said Joe Becker, Children's Rights Advocacy Director at Human Rights Watch. These children will now be able to reunite with their families and pursue their education instead of languishing in prison. Since 2013, Nigerian armed forces have detained over 3,600 children, including 1,617 girls, for suspected involvement with non-state armed groups, according to the United Nations. During the same period, Nigerian authorities have released at least 2,200 children, according to the UNICEF. Now, of course, all of this is financed by, there it says Turkey, but family, you have to understand that this has been a 2,000-year war against Israel and the children of Israel. These are prisoners of war. And the sad thing is that the Christian Nigerians and the Muslim Nigerians, a lot of them are the same people, except for the Fulani are different. And the Fulani have many different names, and they are linked to the Edomites. But you see that this is a global war where you have nations conspiring against the people of Yisrael. Although children should certainly not be punished for any potential terrorism, the threat of terrorism by the Muslims in Nigeria is a legitimate one.
Number one, it started with terrorism. Some people in the north felt that they had brain, that they were very, very wise. And so they wanted to introduce the ultra version of Sharia, plus they wanted to punish the southeastern region and instill fear. And so they invested in terrorism. They used their own money to invest in terrorism. And the resulting profit was what the foreign countries came with innocence in their hearts, thinking it was true. They didn't know it was manufactured. And they came and brought money in dollars, billions, and it was pocketed, including by the present president you have now. He was involved in that money. And then we had the horror of Nigerian soldiers watching Nigerian Air Force planes pass over their head to drop weapons for the terrorists to kill them. And that when soldiers saw this and now said, you know what, we don't even want to go to that war front and fight, they were called mutineers. That they're creating a coup, they're creating a mutiny, and were killed. That is the kind of kangaroo place that you lay your allegiance to. But that is not over. Even though Chad came in and destroyed that system, you know, Chad, which is such a shame. We couldn't solve it, but Chad are the guys who went and solved it. Now there's going to be a stage two. The stage two is how could they make the whole of Nigeria Sharia? Now, if they can make the whole of Nigeria Sharia, I also promise you that with the events of what COVID-19 has done, and with the fact that oil is now dead, Nigeria will become a hub for terrorism. So when you say you support Biafra, you're supporting one, saving your loved ones, saving your children, saving your grandchildren, saving your in-laws with your belief system from being massacred by the oncoming efforts by a group of people whose brains are not larger than the size of an alligator, because the alligator's brain is said to be the size of a walnut. Hence why it's always attacking and eating. It has no other brain. It has no other calculations to make. As mighty as an alligator is, this brain is the size of a walnut. So therefore, the alligator has no time to reason with you. It's going to try and kill you. That's all. The brain is so small that it has just a section for eating and attacking. That's all. Cognitive behavior, cognitive reasoning is zero in an alligator. And that is the kind of brains you have in northern aspect of Nigeria. It has to be Sharia. And it has to be that they take all the money. That's all they know. We take all the money of Nigeria. Like now, NNPC is completely broke and empty. The president, your kangaroo president, emptied NNPC.
So now the children have become a potential opportunity for money making, what with the $400 and some billion grant from who knows where, well, very likely through UN nations or Europe or Bill Gates, to treat these children for COVID, maybe to vax them. What is being said is that many of them are being returned to their parents, but it says the orphans will be kept by the government. So basically they've been rounded up and we don't know what's being done with them or how they're being tracked, what their names are, because many of them are being rejected at borders. And how are they going to be able to track these children's parents? How can the government be held accountable for that?
Some of those children were tested for COVID-19 on arrival in Kaduna and were found to be positive. First, it was the fears that bordered on security of grooming children that could easily end up as future members of Boko Haram. Now, apart from being vulnerable to the ravaging coronavirus, these children are seen as instruments for faster transmission of COVID-19 in the society. COVID-19 may have provided the authorities a fresh opportunity to design a new future for this category of citizens and have them integrated.
I want you to study the faces of these children because they look so much like African Americans and West Indians as we go forward. So who are these people? Well, apparently they're called the Hausa people of Nigeria, and they're found chiefly in northwestern Nigeria and the adjacent southern Niger, and they constitute the largest ethnic group in the area, which also contains another large group called the Fulani. The Fulani, perhaps one of whom are settled among the Hausa as a ruling class, having adopted the Hausa language and culture. So once again, this is one of the largest populations in southern and western Nigeria. But amongst them is another large group that's not larger than them. It's only half of what they are. And they are the ruling class, having adopted the Hausa language and culture, but they are called the Fulani. The Fulani is what they are called. So you have two different people calling themselves the Hausa people. But really one of them is the Hausa and the other one is the Fulani. And the Fulani are a small group that rules over them. This is something very important that you're going to have to remember going forwards. Okay, we have two people, one ruling the other. On the far left, we have the Hausa people, and then the other three images are the Fulani people. And you see they look very different. So I found this educator through a number of channels. His name's Clayton Udo. I haven't met him personally yet or spoken to him personally, but he seems to be really speaking the truth. He's a Biafran. The Biafrans know that they're Israel, but he calls himself a Christian, and he speaks up a lot about the politics of what's going on in Nigeria.
The Fulani hegemony. The Fulanis, they are not many. The Fulanis are not even, when you look into it, 1/4 of the population of Akwa Ibom State. In fact, the Fulanis are so few, they are not one population of the quarter of Bayelsa State, where they rule the whole country. They are the 0.1% that I was talking about that takes billions of dollars out of the country and put in foreign banks. People have always had this illusion, this myth, that the Fulani are mumu, that they're stupid. No, they're brilliant people. Because when you look at their number and how they've kept Nigeria at where it is till today, it is an amazing thing. They are very, very wise. They are very, very crafty. And if you've gone into the history of the Fulani, this is what they've done in other countries. Unfortunately for us, we didn't figure it out in time. In places like Ghana, Ghanaians figured it out and killed them, literally, killed them in life. Make sure that they don't ever get involved in the politics of the land anymore. In other countries, they push the Northerners back, and because they know these guys, there's something about them when it comes to the intrigue of rulership. They know how to, they're crafty, very, very crafty people. They are not as many as 1/4 of the population of Bayelsa or Rivers, but they'll rule the whole country, and you guys cannot move. You cannot progress. You cannot do anything with your lives. And I say that it is your responsibility to deal with that. You're saying, well, I'll just live under it and see how tomorrow will be. No, they've spoiled everything to the point that at this stage, there's going to be no remedy for what is about to happen to the zoo. Did you believe that you were living in a country? Let's look at the scenario of what happened to the country you were living in. You were living in a country where one day a guy got up and said, let's make Boko Haram. Let's create Boko Haram. We invest some money and create something that will kill lots of Nigerians, that will cause terror in the land, and that the United States and the other global powers will come in a rush to come and bring in aid for us to fight that terrorism, and we'll pocket that money. We'll pocket that money. And that to make this business very, very lucrative, Nigerian soldiers will have the horror of sitting in trenches watching helicopters that belong to the Nigerian Air Force flying over their head to drop arms in the Sambisa forest for the Boko Haram and flying back of their own military. And that the few Nigerian soldiers who knew what was up and said they're not going to the front to go and fight that kind of a stupid war were held down as being members of a mutiny and were condemned to be executed. Can you believe that you are living in a kangaroo zoo of a country like that? A country where they sponsor terrorism so that the money that will come out of it from foreign aid, from global politics, they will pocket it in their money and put it in their bank account. That is the terrorism, the impunity of the Zoo Republic, and you are living in there. Now, you may say, well, dude, it's an old story. Well, no, there's a part 2 of that story. They need a terrorism apparatus to make the name of Allah and the Islamic cause of the North to radiate out there in the ether. And for that to happen, Boko Haram now has failed because guess what? Chad, in one of the strangest twists of fate, got involved. And so Boko Haram has been killed en masse, slaughtered. But unfortunately for us, the elements in the Nigerian Senate, in Aso Rock, and other places who were sponsors of Boko Haram are still alive, walking freely in the society.
Let me just state here that the people that you now know as Turkish Arabs were not the original Arabs. They were colonized by the real Ishmaelite Arabs and the Edomite Arabs, and they were enslaved. That's why they were called Slavic people. But they had a particular group among them who took on exactly the habits and abilities of the Muslims, the black Muslims, the Ishmaelites, and primarily the Edomites. And that then is the people who became what you know as the Moroccan Arabs, who became known to be the Moroccan Arabs in about 700 AD. That's 700 years after the birth of Christ. And so let's just get into a little more history on that. So the history of Esau and Jacob in the Bible describes Esau as being the eldest son, but Jacob being promised the inheritance of Abraham to be the seed of Israel. And it is said that Jacob tricks Esau out of his blessing, but Jacob had actually won it from him and it had been proclaimed by Yah. But what happens as a consequence of this is because Jacob, at his mother's request, tricks his father into giving him his birthright, which was the blessing that Yah promised would go to him, his father became angry and said his brother would eventually usurp him, gain an advantage, and then his brother Esau would be served by Jacob, and Jacob would be the one who is Israel. So Israel would serve Esau, and Esau would be called the end of the world. And so when we look at history, we see that an example of Esau or an Edomite was Herod, the king of Israel during the time of their captivity to Rome. He is said in scripture to be an Edomite, but he was appointed by Rome. And the Romans, of course, were Edomites. They were Gentile mixed with Edomite. So here's where the conflict began, was between Esau and Jacob. And to this day, we still have Esau and Jacob struggling together and confounding the whole world because of it. Now, I don't want anyone despising the Edomites or the Fulani as you go into this, because the law of Yah says, do not despise your brother Esau. That's a command. But this is just to gain some understanding. And you must remember, only two people came into the promised land, Joshua and Caleb. Caleb was an Isaurian. Joshua was Israel. So, and also Job was also an Edomite. So, and Job was the one who had the trial of his life, lost his entire family, and then Yah gave his family back to him. So this is actually, if you're Isaurian or an Edomite, this is the trial of your life. You have to leave your entire family to join Israel, and your family will be given back to you. Okay, so this is not to discriminate against those who have a heart for Yah, which was the real promise that Yah had also given to Esau as a possibility for his life, but instead it became this whole terrible thing. But that's another story. Let's get into the history, the more recent history of Esau in terms of the transatlantic slave trade. Basically, the Edomites took over the identity of Israel, and then, but these are also the Edomites who typically ran down and captured Israel in North Africa and West Africa. And I just want to quickly skip slides here, because just to give a little bit more evidence of the presence in North Africa. Here is the areas where the Nigerians are and where Edom is, and this is a particular Edomite, Ayuba or Solomon Diallo, or Job Solomon Diallo. And of course, Job, some speculate that he was actually an Edomite, a good man who was an Edomite. But this gentleman was a Muslim, and he captured and enslaved the Hebrews coming out of these areas in Nigeria. And you can also see, here's another map of Edom. And this again is in the same region where we saw the map of Africa and the Hebrews. And this particular guy was an Arab Edomite slave stealer trader who was captured by the Yahudim after capturing a whole bunch of Hebrews and selling them into slavery. And then he was sold to the very trader he had just sold all the Hebrews to. And then he was taken to America. He begged him beforehand, the white slave trader, because they would sell to the Europeans. The Europeans could not handle the mosquitoes. They could not handle the malaria or the heat. So this is the work that the black Edomites did in Africa. And so he pleaded with the guy, and he said, look, I just sold you a bunch of slaves, but his beard had been shaved off and his hair had been shaved off as well. So he said, well, contact your people, send for them, and if they come get you, I'll free you. But he was sent to America, and then when he arrived there soon after, he was freed and sent back to, and celebrated and sent back to England. And, you know, as we're learning more and more now, there was a conflation, in other words, a confusion and mixing of the identity of the Moors and the Jews, because it became taboo to call yourself a Hebrew or Yahudim because you would be persecuted or killed. So they started calling themselves Moors, and Edom was calling themselves Moors. But it's actually the Moors who enslaved. When they talk about slavery in West Africa or even coming out of Europe, if you're talking about slavery, you're talking about the Edomites, the Arab Edomites, and the Arab Africans, the Arab Muslims enslaving the Israelites and even force converting them to become Muslims and then sharing and taking on their identity. But anyway, so here is another Edomite. Bones, smaller jawlines, larger cheekbones, broad forehead. Okay? And then here's an Edomite also, and performing a dance, and you can see in high fashion they often have these tribal markings on models during fashion shows, and it is very similar to the tribal markings of this particular group of Edomites, and I think it's almost like an homage to who they are. It's as though this were an homage from France and Paris and Fashion Week to the Fulani, who enable them to remain billionaires, who monopolize all of the money in Africa, places like Nigeria. America does it too, but France is the most powerful colonizer in Africa. That's why when you go to France, you have no idea what these people do because they don't do anything. They don't create any major industry. They live off of Africa. The Fulani line down the center of the face is the most common makeup you see in the fashion industry. And this is a symbol of being two-faced or wearing a mask. So this is Esau, Edom, wearing the mask of being Israel or being another people. So they call themselves the Husan people, but they're really the Fulanis who are living among the Husan. They call themselves Nigerians, but they are really Fulani people living among the Nigerians. And it goes on and on all through America and Europe and everything. These are photos from men's wedding ceremonies, men dressed up in makeup, men dressed up like women. So you see the duality, and the line down the center of the face is a symbol of that duality, the two-facedness. Just like in drama, there's the face that laughs and the face that cries. It's a mask that is being worn to play a part. And so it's deceptive. And so this is what is celebrated in the fashion industry. And then this is why you see the Fulani. They even hide amongst Israel. A large percentage of the Muslims are in Nigeria, are force converted Israelites. And so they are the largest tribe in Nigeria, and still the Fulani are the ruling class among them, is this what this article says. So the Fulani and the Edomites eventually mixed in with the Europeans via the Ashkenazis, and they have their associations with the Rothschilds. Even if you look at the original Rothschilds, especially the eldest son, he looks very black. If you look at original, he just looks like a very light-skinned black person because they mixed in with the white races, and this is very evident. So if you see, the Nigerian leader Buhari taking trips off to England, he's going to visit his relatives. He's going to visit his cousins, the Rothschilds, because he is Fulani and he is an Edomite. And this is what I always say to Africans, I'm like, you need to look into who the families are who are running your nation, because this is not black on black violence. This is the Edomites against Israel. Now remember, the governors discussed the risk that the Almajirin children are exposed to because of the coronavirus disease, and they unanimously decided to totally ban the Almajirin system and evacuate the children to their parents or states of origin, and agreed to take a cue from Kano, Kaduna, Kasarawa states, who have begun returning Almajirin children to families and states of origin, while those within their states who do not have parents are taken care of by the government. So here is a system where these children are just rounded up and given to the government, kind of like what happened to the Mexican immigrants who tried to come into America. They were rounded up and taken by the government, and nobody knows where they went. And so this becomes a perfect skeleton key excuse to round up children and remove them. Now, I'm not saying that this is what's happening. I'm just saying it's an excuse to do so. Now, funnily enough, or what is interesting, is that the meeting also engaged the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Al-Haji Muhammad Sabo Nanonono, on the incentives available to Nigerian farmers and how those in their region can benefit. So the meeting also involved farming incentives for rural development. Now, this is to try to somehow benefit these communities so that the children don't pour out of, poverty and into the streets. But so anyway, the minister outlined all the agricultural programs of the federal government, including the provision of farm inputs and fertilizers, cluster farming training, and the deployment of what is called there in Nigeria as kind of extension workers, provision of rural roads, value chain, addition, development of irrigation facilities, agro-mechanization, and mobilization of agro-rangers. So the Buhari government is trying to maintain its place because election is coming up, even though, you know, they're never there to govern. But the agro-rangers are supposed to keep disputes between the Fulani and the rest of the Nigerian farmers at bay. And this has been a huge issue. There are many who we're gonna go into it in a minute, but so in Nigeria, Fulani herders and farmers clash over resources. According to this news piece, 28 people were dead from violence, and over 3,000 people fled from the Bali village in Adamawa, taking refuge in neighboring communities. This is the farmers. The government has sent police reinforcements and are trying to reinstate the peace, but the conflict between Fulani herders and local farmers has increased in recent years as a result of desertification. So their herds push the animals onto farming land. Desertification that pushes herders to graze their animals on farming land. So they're stealing land. They're stealing the resources on the land that belongs to these other farmers. According to a 2012 report by Minority Rights Group International, Boko Haram has targeted farming communities that are in dispute with largely Muslim pastoralists. Another problem is associated with the recent influx of Fulani herdsmen into certain areas of the country is suspicion that they are being used for some political gain. Zachariah Zamani Alumanga, an advisor for the Ombatse group in Nasarawa state, has claimed the state governor orchestrated the influx of Fulani mercenaries into Nasarawa state for political gain, something the governor denies. Lawmakers in Nasarawa state have made similar claims against the governor, accusing him of engaging the services of Fulani mercenaries to unsettle the state with the intention of holding on to power beyond the upcoming general election, February 14th. So this is an older piece. And so this is, again, conflict taking place between two different people within the land, and it's connected to the COVID and it's connected to these children. So both groups need the land, but listen to this, what the scripture says. The land is as to the enemies of Israel. The land is as the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness. Yea, nothing shall escape them. So both groups need the land for very different reasons. The Fulani herding families are always on the move looking for food and water for the animals, and they say they don't want to own the vast landscapes they pass through every year. For farmers who live and work in one place, land ownership is essential. So they basically desertify the land, don't even want to take ownership, but don't take responsibility for what their cattle do to the land. And this leads to poverty and leads to more children in the street for the farmers. So this image is kind of telling the truth. The Fulanis take over land and desertify land through roaming cattle ranching. And of course, by having animals overgraze land causes desertification. So if they're grazing farmland, they're going to desertify it. And this is how they take over land across Africa. And many nations have had to deal with it. And this article, quite uniquely from the BBC, says that that the Fulanis are a menace to the farmers, but that's quite a rare perspective. To counter this, propaganda from the Daily Mail shows them as the most endangered people and this oppressed people. However, they're participating in all of this capitalization of the land as sort of a quiet part of it. We have articles that state that most of the Muslims, as I said before as I've been talking here, it says that most of these Muslims are Fulani, but these are not. These kids have the face of Africans, of Israelites, of African Americans or Jamaicans. Look at this child in the middle staring right at us. He looks like an African American or a Trinidadian or something. You know, these are our people, but they've been force converted to the Muslim faith, because you see how different they look from the Fulanis. But they are all called, the Islamists or the people of Boko Haram are all called the same people. Yet, when you look closely, it says that the Fulani preside and reside among them as the ruling class. So you see, it's Edom. The PDP, or the Democratic Party of Nigeria, who was in office before 2015, believes that the Almajirin have been betrayed, and that under the guise of protecting the Almajirin, that they're actually being deported. And the PDP had previously set up feeding programs as well as housing and a lot of schools. And this was promised by the current government, but none of it's happened.
What we are saying is this: what is the policy direction of the APC government as it affects the Almajirins and the ordinary Nigerians? We should not situate this issue. We should not locate it just within the context of the Almajirins. Just as we have the Almajirins in the north, you also have the downtrodden people who labor on daily basis in the south to make ends meet. So the question we are saying is this: when President Muhammadu Buhari wanted power in 2015, he rallied these ordinary people and said that he symbolizes their interest, and that he was coming to government to work in their interest. Some people even believe he was going to come and distribute free houses for them. Some believe that they were being taken to El Dorado, not knowing that they were going nowhere and they were going to be abandoned by the APC and this government.
Said that Kano State had about 3 million of the 9 million out-of-school children in northern Nigeria. And that's something I think we should worry about. And if there's anybody who should have advanced the Almajiri schooling system, it should have been President Buhari, because he's a northerner, he's right next to Kano State, and this should have been a good time for the Almajiri school system to flourish.
I recall the PDP administration took an initiative towards solving the Almajiri problem.
And the APC, with its messianic falsehood and campaign and propaganda, promised the people that they should abandon the schools that were built by the PDP government and come to support them. No fewer than 157 schools were built for the Almajiris. If the APC government had added one block of classroom to that 157 blocks of classroom, they should challenge the PDP to it and say that in so and so village, they built a block of classroom as Almajiri school. And the question, where the issue that we are raising, is that APC promised Nigerians millions of jobs. They even said that every month they will be paying Nigerians. Nigerians are not seeing any effect of any plan anywhere. And Nigerians have come to realize that this administration and its political party that brought it into office has absolutely nothing to offer Nigerians.
That's the greatest fear. They're not concerned about the plight of those children. They're concerned about their own plight, because, I mean, if those children were to unleash, I mean, they can be used as cannon fodders. If anybody finds them, if anybody wants to take advantage of the situation and make the country, set the country on fire, those children can be easily used to foment trouble. So it's not so much about the plight of the children. The lawmakers, the political elite in northern Nigeria, and indeed many other parts of Nigeria, are concerned about their own security. Don't forget that COVID has put all of us on the same level. You can't go anywhere. So now they begin to get concerned about that. I mean, I cannot understand why you'll be deporting people from one state in Nigeria to the other. It violates the constitution of Nigeria.
Yes, it is truly strange that the government will wake up just suddenly and will begin to deport young men and girls around the country from their living, from the state where they live, their state of residence and say they are taking them to their home state. To do what? What is the educational facility provided in the home states where they are being taken to? How prepared is the government in the home states where they are being taken to? And you even discover, because it is a planless process, some of the states where they are being taken to are already rejecting them.
The administration of Goodluck Ebele Jonathan came up with the Almajirin Model School to cater for proper upbringing of these kids. What states are these schools and whose responsibility is it to revive the training programs?
Which was a PDP government. No fewer than 157 schools were built and equipped to take charge of the education of these children, of these young boys and girls. What has happened to them, to these schools? What is the policy direction? What has the government of APC and APC as a party, what have they done to improve on what was handed over to them? It is cheap talk.
Ahmed Lawan had said that it's time that the Almajirin school system be revisited, and I hope that they will put action to that. If that happens, it's a step in the right direction, slow as it may be. And then you had asked Mr. Olugbodinyo a question that whose responsibility is it to get the systems working again? It's the Universal Basic Education Commission, because that's the agency responsible for primary education across the country.
About a year ago, Biafra was recognized as a nation by the UN, and about 5 months ago by the United States. And of course, right now, because oil has crashed, nobody's really wanting to do business with Nigeria because the economy has been gutted, because the oil industry has crashed.
22.8 billion US dollars was empty. NNPC is broke. And what was the thought of the guys with the brain the size of a walnut, that oil would still be the same price it was? Well, guess what? Oil fell. Oil is dead. Oil, if you've heard the story, if you know what is going on now, oil is dead. Now, with oil being dead, what do I mean by oil is dead? It's $20 a barrel. Fell down to 17 yesterday, Seth. I mean, real bad situations. Then when Nigeria goes into paying for their shipping, trying to pay for refining, trying to pay for the overhead costs, when everything is said and done, Nigeria's profit is $2 a barrel. So it's dead. It's dead. Now, last year, Nigeria borrowed 3.312 trillion naira from the IMF, and it was scheduled to be paid. I'm trying to show you the terrorism and the loans, because remember the title is Terrorism, Loans and Impunity. Impunity is that people who sponsored Boko Haram have the impunity to walk about freely in Aso Rock. They walk about freely in the north. They walk about freely in that country. No fear. No fear. No fear. And they are angry when you don't call them honorable, when you don't call them my excellency and stuff, including the president of Nigeria. He's a sponsor of terrorism. And he took that money, he pocketed that money that came from foreign countries in millions of dollars to pay for the fight against terrorism. He pocketed that money too. Now, okay, you see, Ifeanyi Okoye is now saying it's less, it fell some more. It's less than $2 a barrel now for oil. If you know what is happening, they say Port Harcourt is dead. If you hear what is happening, oil is dead. Now, in a world where oil is dead, okay, you don't even have the oil to pay. You went and collected a loan, 3.31 trillion, 3.312 trillion, something like that. And you scheduled to pay it off in the year 2025, which you won't be able to pay it off. Now, I don't know if you remember, we have taken the IMF loan at least a good 3 times before today. For each time we took the IMF loan and defaulted on it, there was a time Naira to the dollar was like 2 to 1. It was 2 Naira to a dollar. We defaulted. The next thing you heard, there was a time we were starting to say it's 15. It's 20 Naira to a dollar, so. Then we defaulted. The next thing you heard is 100 and something. You guys sometimes, remember my last video about social conditioning? You're so conditioned that nonsense now is sense to you. Nonsense has become sense. Where is your vice president? Which country do you see in the world where the vice president may not be seen and there is silence and nothing is said about it? Which country do you see that kind of a thing happening? Which country in the world do you see a country where the president is constantly flying between his country and London? He's constantly flying between London. You guys have been so socially conditioned to nonsense that you now accept it as common sense. Nonsense, that is crap of the highest order. You now say this is normal. Leave our president. Like, Sai Baba, leave our president alone. But here's the thing. In the end of the story, do you also know that this very country that you're living in, the security of your life is at the same level of the security of the nearest chicken that just passed by you. Yeah, those of you who are so attached to the zoo, you swear by the zoo. The security of your life is not different from that chicken that just passed by. It's not very different. The chicken maybe even may have a greater chance at surviving than you. Why? Because the so-called people that you think are your leaders have invested in your possible death, which is terrorism. So there'll be a phase 2. And they have tried several times to integrate themselves into the southeastern sector. They want to come in. They want to come in. You know, they use cows as an excuse, which shouldn't be an excuse for someone to try and come into your place. But that in the final analysis of all this, one day you guys will wake up and will be right smack middle of a jihad. And as far as I'm concerned, for the love I have in my heart, I pray it does never happen to you. Because if that thing happens, it's going to be one of the most horrific things we've ever seen. There are those Northerners that are there. We know very well from our own top secret thing. There's a lot of arms buried now in the floor of the southeastern region of Nigeria. Armed depots on the ground. A lot of arms are buried there for the day of reckoning between you guys and the North. And most of those military cantonments or those military barracks or those military installations, they have switched over the battalions in such a way that the battalions that are there are loyal to the North. That is why when I see people saying, oh, we're going to have peace. No. The day they call on jihad, you will be surprised that even the military barracks, it will be a jihad assisted by the military. And it will lead to death. It will lead to the kind of bloodshed we've never seen in our lives before. But you see, here's another story, because when we now discovered that Boko Haram and terrorism, some of the bombings we had and some of the things that happened was being sponsored by Turkey, then we now understood that there's another dimension to it, which is the dimension that, let us say, and I'm now giving you, because remember I say I always want us to think, to calculate, not to just follow things blindly. Let us say the North took over the South finally. They finally succeeded in killing enough of you guys, murdering you, raping your wives and your daughters, and doing all kinds of havoc till you guys surrendered and became a full Muslim nation. That nation will become a hub of terrorism, global terrorism. That is why the Republic of Biafra is dedicated to saving your life in the southeastern region, plus saving the rest of the world. Because Nigeria, and I'm going to get to that other stage of the point, that Nigeria is going to become like a bad version of Somalia, where at some point, because of poverty, because of hard terrorism run amok. There's penalties whenever you default on a loan, you know. That's one thing they never tell the Nigerian people. There's penalties for defaulting on loans. Yeah. So the same guys who are sponsoring terrorism, I want to show you how they chop money rich. They'll collect money from terrorism help. That is, they sponsor the terrorism so that America and Europe and everybody can hear. And then when they send the millions to help, they pocket it. Then they ask for loans and they pocket half and release half to the Nigerian society. Then they go around emptying the coffers of Nigeria, like the sovereign accounts, empty, to the point that the British Prime Minister said that Nigeria is fantastically corrupt. He has never, that even the money, it's just like the money for the country, the main bank account of the country, Nigerians empty. Who are the people doing this? It's not people from Akwa Ibom. It's not people from Rivers State. It's not people from Edo State. It is not people from Bayelsa. I can also tell you that the Igbos are not seeing that money. It is the Fulani hegemony. Terrorism, then loans. That is all that has been happening in the last 5 years of the zoo. Long life, the Republic of Biafra. This is Biafra 2.0 speaking. Terrorism and loans is the only thing that has been happening in Nigeria in the last 10 years of Nigeria. But there are people here who will come and say, Nigeria, we held it. It's over. It's over. The 3.312 trillion, they cannot make it in 2025 with the price of oil. And the 29.8 billion that the cow Fulani hegemony terrorists collected this year to complete the budget from China, he will default on it. And you remember, if you've watched my previous videos, what China does when you default on their loans, the Chinese money trap. They'll come and pick up your infrastructure. They will not even default. They don't have time to go and to put late fees on you. They don't have time to put late fees on you. They don't have time to beg you to pay. Or they don't have time to extend the loan. They'll just come and take your airport. Like what has happened in Zambia. They'll come and take your airport. You default, they come and take your wharf. You default, they come and take your Guinea, New Papua. Yeah, Guinea, New Papua. They took everything. Sri Lanka, half of the infrastructure now belongs to China. Zambia, totally destroyed. Broadcasting, like they come and take their equivalent of NTA, Nigerian television. They took their broadcasting network, took their water system, took their light system. Now, Chinese are in charge of Zambian police force. So it's about terrorism. These are terrorists, Sharia terrorists, who came and claimed that they wanted to change Nigeria and that they love Nigeria, like the zoo animal you have now, who keeps on flying to London, like a kid who runs out of the classroom while lectures are going on, like a man who cannot sit his ass in his office and do his work, a small boy. You cannot be jumping up and down as the president of the country. What has happened? Oil is below $2 a barrel in profit for Nigeria. Below. Maybe $1 something, meaning that oil is done. And Nigeria is at least 4 open scheduled loans. At least 4 open scheduled loans based on their collateral is, we will pay you based on how much oil we sold. All loans have papers. They have schedules. They have the paperwork. Have you seen the penalties? Have you seen the penalties for missing these loans? The Chinese normally write their penalties in infrastructure. If you can't pay me, we can take Abuja Airport. If you can't pay me, we'll take Lagos Airport. If you can't pay me, we'll take Wharf Airport. My friend.
May 12, 2020, it is said these men tried to bribe the Nigerian government, but obviously this kind of thing has been going on for a very long time. This is being used as leverage against the Chinese for Nigeria to get their country back. However, let's take a look at the real process that's been happening with the corrupt government.
You know that the loan that China is paying, they cargoed it, meaning ship arrived with the money in containers. Why do you do that? Only in Nigeria that they say a loan that was collected by the federal government of Nigeria had to come in a container, had to come in a ship. Okay, do you know that the loan from IMF was what these Hausa people, I told you, they have the brain of a walnut. All they think of is to chop money and to kill, just like an alligator. The alligator has the brain the size of a walnut, so all the alligator can think of is to kill and eat. How can you come down to the level of corruption that you say loan in these days of digital banking, in these days of electronic banking, in these days of banking in which it's just wireless? They insist, say, make that money come in cash, land for Lagos Wharf. And so you're surprised when I say that they follow. That is impunity. Remember, the title of my show today is Terrorism, Loans, and Impunity. They say that is, they no fear people anymore. Make it arrive in container when we feel collect our share. Do you know how much of that money gets lost in the process? Loan money. How can you have there's no, Nigeria, zoo. The worst thing in history, money coming in container. When I heard it, my spirit left me. I called someone, I said, it's a lie. It's a lie. It's a lie. Jesus, it's a lie. They confirmed it for me. They said, yes, that day, army fooled the wharf. That day, military presence in the wharf was beyond understanding because the money was arriving in a ship. The money was arriving in a ship. Military presence, full wharf on different loads that are arriving at the wharf, not through wireless, this thing will come a part of Biafra for one reason, and that is to save the world from terrorism, because the Fulanis are all thinking of how they could make the whole of Nigeria Sharia land. But when you look at the influence of what happens when a country becomes totally Sharia, the outside influences, like we now know that Boko Haram, in conjecture with the Nigerian government, was receiving its armory and everything from Turkey, extremist countries. So Turkey combined with Aso Rock to give Boko Haram its arms. Turkey. Then imagine a Nigeria that is totally Sharia.
So once again, the Janissaries who learned after being enslaved through the Slavics, through the Edomites and Ishmaelites enslaving them, perfectly learned to imitate the Arabs, and then came down and took over the whole Arab identity, the Janissaries. So the Janissaries were among the Turkish.
The pressure is the whole of northern Nigeria is Sharia, the whole of southern is Christian. If you've read the Quran, you will understand that this is an abnormality in their eyes. They're not supposed to be under us. The Quran forbids it, that they should be under us. Like Muslim be vice president, Christian be president. It forbids that. It forbids that they should ever even work with us because we're unbelievers, we're infidels. Now I've heard about the secret armed depots in Anambra, Enugu. We're hearing about it from here. Strong information. The federal government is hiding arms all over the place so that the day of reckoning will come. I don't want you to be there when that happens. Country I'm putting in foreign banks. Foreign banks have eaten trillions of dollars from African money. Not the actual African, just using it to do their investments, using it to trade on it. Because wait, I told you the story. The other day that Trump released the name of all the Nigerian guys that have their money is in billion in American banks. It's in billion. And I remember how I told you how the trade world works. $1 million deposits gives you permission to do $1 million trades. $1 billion deposits give you permission to do $1 billion trades. So when someone puts in that kind of money, then he ignores it for 8 years because he doesn't want EFCC to catch him. And he leaves it there till people forget he even stole it, then he can go and touch it. Do you know how much money foreigners have made from that your money? And they trade daily. They don't trade in years. They trade daily. They've made trillions of dollars from your money. And in that brain, like I said, their brains are like the size of a walnut, which is what you have in an alligator. All they know is to kill and eat money. They don't know anything better than that. In that kind of a brain, they think they're smart. Do you know the worst thing about this story? Someone told me this thing 4 years ago. He told me there's no money in Nigeria. Said Nigeria, they're bankrupt. I didn't believe him. But the recent time when I started doing my research and everything, and checking the events and everything, I now discovered it's true. But like I said, the greatest crime done on you guys is they chop profit, they chop loan. Now, what is it? That will pass me. Mama, see, that will pass. They chop profit. This Fulani people, they chop profit, they chop loan. That is the worst thing. That is, I've never seen anything. That is animals. Animals. They chop profit, chop loan. Loan money. Frank Bello and Simon Ekpa, we've concluded one thing. Even the Yorubas are beginning to discover that the Fulani has destroyed everything. The Yorubas have now seen that the Fulani are a problem. The Yorubas are now calling for Duduwa Republic. I've told you, don't be surprised. The thing will break up into three, to your greatest shock and surprise. Oduduwa will break up, Biafra will break up, and then the North can go their way and carry that their brain, that walnut brain. They can go and do their Sharia over there and do all the crap and be finding terrorist organizations to fund so that they can get money from United States and all the things I've talked about. They can go and do it over there. All hell Biafra, Biafra 2.0.
South, southeast, southwest, they are not Almajiris. These are mercenaries. These are Fulani mercenaries. They are not Almajiris. And the people that are stopping them on the border, please try and search those bags they are carrying. Most of them, they contain ammunition. Even though they are not all ammunition, but some of them, this is what the guy said. All those cows and beans and what they are bringing is not what they are coming in for. They are using it for covering up. He told me, imagine that these people, they are all going to live in the bush. So when the strike came up, where are you running to? You are running into the bush. Which people are in the bush is the Fulanis. So we are done. We are done. The governor of Imo State, Uzodimma, this man is a threat to Igbo land. This man is a danger to Eastern State. He has killed, he has sold Igbo State within these few months he came in. He has paid Fulanis 8 million naira for their cow that was killed or missing. How much did he pay to the indigents that lost their crops and everything? Nothing. He has gone ahead now to bribe the Imo State judges with SUVs so that nobody takes him to court. Because as soon as you try it, these are the people that will strike off the court case. This man have sold Imo State into the hands of the Fulanis. This is his agreement with Abakiyari. That was why he was made the governor of Imo State. This is a first-class information. They are waiting for the time to come. Boko Haram have threatened that they will attack Southeast, South after the COVID-19, and this is their preparation. This is their preparation. Just imagine the trailers coming. When those people came down, look at them. They are not Almajiris. They are trained soldiers of the Boko Haram. They are trained Fulani soldiers. They have surrounded the Southeast very much that we have no place to go. Watch your bushes. Southeastern people, Southwest, watch your bushes. Watch your bushes. That's where they are hiding. That's where they are living. If they strike, come on. Where are you running to? You are running into the bush to take cover. Which people are in the bush? They are the Fulanis. You are dead. Imo State governor have sold Imo State to the hand of the Fulanis. Please, my people, share this message so that it will get up to the office of the decision makers in Southeast, Southwest. Please. This is an urgent message. It's a security message. Please. We are done. We are done. Fulanis are in the bush, and our governors in Southeast are aiding them. Please. Thank you very much.
Now remember again that meteor fell. That angel fell over Nigeria. That means the star of the Fulani has fallen. Okay? And this is what I've been talking about in my other videos about the prophetic scriptures that seem to line up America as siding with Africa during this war, this world war. But ultimately in the scripture it says no one's going to help America. But we can see how this is shaping up because both the UN and America recognized Biafra, okay, as a legitimate country. And it looks like the star of the Edomites in Nigeria has fallen. And they're going to try to recover it with this kind of Boko Haram war. And so this is why this guy keeps talking about how Biafra is the only salvation, because they're Israelites. They acknowledge and they know that they're Israel. And from what he's saying, the other groups of people, some among the Igbo and other parts of Nigeria, force converted to Islam just to keep the peace. Okay? But these Edomites still know who they are. They know they're not Edomites. They know they're Israel. And Biafra knows but Biafra really knows who they are. Biafra knows they are Israelites. And so this is becoming not only a geographical war, but it's a spiritual war. And that star fell. So it's anyone's guess as to who's going to win this, but I'm going to go ahead and go with Yah, because given everything else that is happening in Nigeria right now, with all of Africa basically really spearheading the whole COVID discussion, kicking the WHO out, refusing to take the vaccines in a lot of countries, even though the corrupt government are taking them, the people are all going against it. They're woke. They're waking up anyway. I mean, they spiritually don't know who they are. They still believe in witchcraft and reincarnation, and that the ancient ones are coming because the North America and the Four Corners have Judah. The people in Africa, except for in Ghana, are largely 10 tribes, so they still don't know who they are. But this is what's going down.
Something is really going on. Because yesterday in the night, Governor Wike arrested people, Fulani herdsmen, hiding inside a trailer with foodstuffs heading to River State. Now, this afternoon at Jaku Junction in Auchi, Edo State, Fulani herdsmen, a lot of them, I don't know their number, I don't want to quote the wrong number, but you can see it on the video. There are a lot of them. Look at them in the top. We are hiding inside a 40-feet container. Hiding inside a 40-feet container. Can you tell me what are these 500 men hiding inside a 40-feet container for and heading to the south? What are these men hiding inside a 40-feet container and heading to the south? I beg every Southerner, wherever you are, Edo State, Delta State, Abia State, Igbo State, Rivers, Bayelsa, Kweko, Cross River, wherever you are, be at alert. Like I said, I don't know what is going on, but something is definitely going on. It cannot be by mistake that just last night, that Governor Wike personally arrested people hiding inside a trailer. And this afternoon, in Edo State, at the Jaku Junction in Auchi, more than 500 Fulani herdsmen are hiding inside a 40-feet container heading south. So that means that there is a coordinated effort to make sure that these people get themselves to the south, irrespective of the lockdown that the so-called government announced. So how can these people be heading to the east when they know that there is a lockdown, when they know that there is restriction of movement from point A to point B, and when there is corona pandemic, that the first law says stay where you are, because this virus does not move, it is transported by people. The same way Ganduje is using Almajirin boys to be sharing corona all over Nigeria. Now they are using Fulani herdsmen. What are they doing in the south? What are these people doing in the south? Everybody in the south, youth leader, community leader, be you whatever you are, stay at alert. Something is happening, but I tell you, I don't know what that is. But if something is happening, yes, something is happening. They go monitor am. They go monitor am. They supposed to follow am. Local government chairman is going to finance this movement now. We want to follow them.
Around April, a team of so-called Chinese doctors arrived in Nigeria, and now their whereabouts are unknown, and government officials are saying that they actually were brought by a corporation because the Chinese government said, well, we're not You have the freedom to refuse if you want, where this is just something we're offering you, and the Nigerian government denied inviting them, and now they've completely disappeared. And so given their connection with the World Health Organization, and given the fact that the leaders of many of the African nations have taken these billion-dollar loans or grants for COVID-19, we have to ask ourselves what is being done with these children. It's both boys and girls. And in the same way they are being held in prisons, where are they being held now? And are they being force-vaxxed? Because now the state is their parent. So it seems they've become an opportunity for the current powers to make money. So I encourage you guys really to pray for these Almajirin and to pray for the children of Nigeria. Because remember, that star did fall. That star did fall. And the power is now gone from Nigeria. I don't know, maybe that's why Buhari is always flying back and forth to England to go and talk to the devil directly. I don't know. But just pray for these children because they have no one. And there's no guarantee of accountability regarding repatriating them to their land or their families. And any one of these could be one of the 144,000. Shalom, family. Please like, subscribe, and share, and hit that notification button. And thank you so much for all of you who have subscribed. And please feel free to come over to Patreon. You can make a donation to me at livelightwell.com, or you can do my paypal.me/livelightwell if you want to make a donation. Thanks for watching. Peace.